I never thought a second-hand car would change my life. But that's exactly what happened last October. My name is Daniel, and I'd been struggling since losing my job at Hanson Technologies. 6 months of unemployment had drained my savings and my spirit. The tech industry crash had hit our town particularly hard, and competition for the few remaining positions was fierce. I was living in a small apartment on the outskirts of Portland, trying to stretch every dollar. My old Honda had finally given up after 15 years of loyal service, leaving me dependent on an unreliable bus system that made job hunting even more challenging. That's when my neighbor, Mr. Richards, approached me one evening as I trudged home from another failed interview. "Daniel, hold up a minute," he called, waving from his garage. Mr. Richards was in his 70s, a retired engineer who'd always been kind to me. "I heard about your car troubles." I nodded, embarrassed by my situation. "Just temporary until I land something." He guided me into his immaculate garage, where a dark blue 2018 Toyota Camry sat gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "My son bought this for me last year, but my eyes aren't what they used to be. Doctor took my license last month." He ran his hand along the hood. "It's just sitting here, and I heard you needed wheels. I can't afford to buy a car right now, Mr. Richards, but thank you." He shook his head. "I'm not selling it, son. I'm giving it to you." I stood there stunned. "That's too generous." "I can't accept." "You can and you will," he interrupted firmly. "You're a good young man who's hit a rough patch. Consider it a loan if that makes you feel better. Return it when you're back on your feet." Despite my protests, Mr. Richards insisted. By that evening, the keys and title were transferred to my name. The car was immaculate, with low mileage and not a scratch on it. It felt surreal driving such a nice vehicle when everything else in my life was falling apart. For the first week, the car performed flawlessly. The built-in GPS system made navigating to interviews easier, and I started to feel a spark of hope return. Then came the night that would change everything. It was exactly midnight when I was startled awake by the sound of an engine starting. I bolted upright in bed, heart racing, and looked out my window to see the headlights of my new car glowing in the parking lot below. Confused and alarmed, I rushed downstairs in my pajamas and slippers. The car was indeed running, but no one was inside. As I approached, I noticed the dashboard was lit up, the GPS screen displaying a route with the title, "Forgive Me," in bold letters. I stood there, staring at those 2 words, a chill running down my spine despite the warm night air. I checked around the car, looking for signs of tampering or break-in, but found nothing. The doors were locked, windows intact. After shutting off the engine and checking that everything was secure, I returned to my apartment, too unsettled to sleep. I convinced myself it was an electrical glitch, perhaps a feature I didn't understand. But the next night at exactly midnight, it happened again. The car started itself, and the same message appeared on the GPS. "Forgive me." This time, I decided to try something. I got dressed, took the keys, and sat in the driver's seat. The route on the GPS showed a destination about an hour away, leading to somewhere in the countryside outside the city. Maybe I was being foolish. Or perhaps it was the desperation of a man with nothing to lose, but I decided to follow it. I put the car in drive and began the journey, guided by that mysterious message. The route took me through the sleeping city, onto the highway, and eventually onto smaller country roads. Houses became sparse, replaced by fields and forests. My hands were sweating on the steering wheel as I wondered what I would find at the end of this strange midnight drive. Around 1 a.m., the GPS directed me to turn onto a narrow gravel road. The trees formed a canopy overhead, their branches swaying in the light breeze. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the path ahead. Finally, the GPS announced, "You have reached your destination." I stopped the car and looked around. There was nothing but woods and a small clearing ahead. Then my headlights caught something. A parked car at the edge of the clearing and a figure standing beside it. As I cautiously stepped out of my vehicle, the figure moved into the light. It was a woman, perhaps in her mid-30s. Her expression was a mixture of shock and something else I couldn't quite read. "You came," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You actually came. Do I know you?" I asked, keeping my distance. She stepped closer, and I saw tears glistening in her eyes. "No," she replied. "But I know the man who owned that car before you." The wind picked up, rustling the leaves around us as she said, "My name is Rebecca Harrison, and I need to tell you about the accident that changed everything." Rebecca's hands trembled as she spoke. "That car you're driving belonged to my husband, Thomas, before he gave it to an elderly man named Richards." The connection made my skin prickle. "Mr. Richards gave me this car a week ago." She nodded. "I figured as much. Thomas always spoke highly of his neighbor." She paused, gathering herself. "May we sit?" "It's a long story, and I've been waiting a very long time to tell it." We sat on a fallen log at the edge of the clearing. The night was quiet, except for the occasional call of an owl and the distant rush of water. 2 years ago, Rebecca began. Thomas was driving home late from a business trip. It was raining heavily that night. On this very road, his headlights caught a car that had skidded off into a ditch. Being the man he was, he stopped to help. Her voice cracked slightly. The driver was a young woman named Ellie Jensen. She was unconscious but alive. Thomas called 911, then stayed with her until help arrived. He held her hand, talked to her even though she couldn't respond, kept her warm with his coat. Rebecca's eyes fixed on some distant memory. When the ambulance finally came, Thomas followed them to the hospital. He waited hours to make sure she was okay. That's the kind of man he was. He couldn't just drive away when someone was in trouble. She pulled a small photo from her pocket and handed it to me. In the dim light from my phone, I could see a smiling couple, Rebecca and presumably Thomas, standing in front of a cabin. Ellie survived, but she had a long recovery ahead. Thomas visited her often. I did too sometimes. We became something like friends with her and her family. Thomas helped her parents with hospital paperwork, insurance claims. He was good at that sort of thing. Rebecca took a deep breath before continuing. But then, 6 months later, Thomas was diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer. Everything happened so fast after that. Within weeks, he went from healthy to bedridden. A tear slid down her cheek. During his final days, he became fixated on something. He kept saying he needed to see Ellie one last time, that he had to tell her something important. But he was too weak to travel, and I was jealous. Foolishly, stupidly jealous. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I never contacted Ellie. I told Thomas I had, but that she couldn't come. It was the only lie I ever told him, but it was unforgivable. The revelation hung heavy in the night air. Thomas died never getting to say what he needed to say. And afterward, I found this. She reached into her bag and produced a sealed envelope with "For Ellie" written on it in shaky handwriting. I couldn't bring myself to deliver it. Grief, shame, I don't know. I kept putting it off. Then weeks became months, and eventually I convinced myself it was too late. She looked directly at me now. But after a year passed, strange things started happening with Thomas's car, the one you're driving now. The GPS would turn on by itself, always at midnight, always showing this location. It happened every night for a week, then stopped when I gave the car to Thomas's father, who then gave it to Mr. Richards. And now it's happening again, I said. The pieces falling into place. Rebecca nodded. This clearing, this is where Thomas found Ellie that rainy night. This is where it all began. She handed me the envelope, its edges worn from being carried but never delivered. I believe this was meant for you to find. Not just the letter, but me. Thomas always believed in signs, in things happening for a reason. My fingers closed around the envelope. What do you want me to do with this? Ellie Jensen lives in Lakeside now, about 20 minutes from here. I think Thomas wants us to deliver this together, to finally complete what he couldn't. I considered the strangeness of it all, the car that had come to me through such unlikely circumstances, the midnight summons, this meeting that seemed impossibly orchestrated. Do you believe in things like this? I asked her. Cars with minds of their own, messages from beyond? Rebecca gave a sad smile. What I believe is that love leaves marks on this world, in people, in objects, in places. Thomas loved deeply and he left unfinished business. Maybe that's all this is. She looked at her watch. It's almost 2 a.m. Ellie works the night shift at Lakeside Memorial Hospital. She'll be there now. The weight of the moment settled on me. Here I was, a stranger thrust into the middle of this unfinished story, holding what might be a final message from a dying man to the woman whose life he had saved. "Okay," I said finally. "Let's go to Lakeside." As we stood to leave, Rebecca touched my arm. "Thank you. I've carried this burden alone for too long." We got into our respective cars, and I followed Rebecca's taillights as we wound our way back to the main road. The GPS screen, which had been showing destination reached, suddenly flickered and changed. A new route appeared, leading to Lakeside Memorial Hospital, and below the map, 2 simple words appeared: "Thank you." The drive to Lakeside Memorial Hospital was surreal. Rebecca's taillights glowed red in the darkness ahead of me, and occasionally I glanced down at the GPS, which continued to display our route with those 2 simple words: "Thank you." The envelope sat on the passenger seat beside me, its presence almost tangible in the quiet car. I couldn't help but wonder what message Thomas had written to Ellie. What was so important that it seemed to reach beyond death itself to ensure its delivery. As we approached the hospital, a massive white structure rising from the darkness like an illuminated sanctuary, my anxiety grew. What right did I have to insert myself into this intimate story? I was just a jobless stranger who happened to receive a car. We parked side by side in the visitor's lot, which was mostly empty at this late hour. Rebecca waited for me to join her face pale in the harsh glow of the security lights. "Are you sure we should do this now?" I asked. "It's the middle of the night," Rebecca nodded. "Ellie works the overnight shift in the ER. If we wait, I might lose my courage again." She looked at the hospital entrance. "Besides, I think Thomas has waited long enough." The sliding doors parted with a whisper as we entered the hospital's main lobby. The antiseptic smell and fluorescent lighting created a stark contrast to the mysterious darkness we'd left behind. A sleepy-looking security guard nodded at us from behind a desk. At the information desk, a nurse in blue scrubs looked up from her computer. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice hushed in the quiet lobby. "We're looking for Ellie Jensen," Rebecca said. "She works in the ER." The nurse's expression grew cautious. "It's very late for a social visit." "It's important," I interjected, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. "We have something that belongs to her, something she should have received a long time ago." Perhaps it was the earnestness in my tone or the emotional weight that must have been visible on our faces, but the nurse's expression softened. "Let me call down to the ER and see if she can take a break." She picked up the phone and dialed an extension. Rebecca and I stood in awkward silence, both of us probably questioning the sanity of our midnight mission. After a brief conversation, the nurse hung up. "She'll meet you in the cafeteria in 5 minutes. Down the hall to your left." The cafeteria was dimly lit, with only a few vending machines illuminated at this hour. We chose a table near the entrance and waited. I noticed Rebecca's hands trembling slightly as she placed them flat on the table to steady herself. "What if she's angry?" Rebecca whispered. "I kept this from her for over a year." Before I could respond, the cafeteria door opened. A woman in dark blue scrubs entered, her auburn hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She looked tired but alert, her eyes quickly finding us and narrowing slightly in confusion as she approached. "Rebecca?" she asked, her gaze flickering between us. "The nurse said you had something for me." Rebecca stood, her composure visibly crumbling. "Ellie, I'm so sorry. I should have come to you a long time ago." Ellie's expression shifted from confusion to concern. "What's this about? And who is—" She gestured toward me. "My name is Daniel," I explained. "I recently received Thomas's car from Mr. Richards. Something unusual happened with it that led us here tonight." Ellie's face paled at the mention of Thomas. "I don't understand." Rebecca pulled out the envelope and held it with trembling hands. "Thomas wanted to see you before he died. He had something important to tell you, but I..." I never called you. I was jealous and afraid, and I've regretted it every day since. Ellie slowly sat down at the table, her professional demeanor giving way to visible emotion. I never knew he wanted to see me. I would have come immediately. I know you would have, Rebecca said, tears now flowing freely. That's why I was afraid. Because everyone loved Thomas, and in those final days, I wanted him all to myself. She placed the envelope on the table. He wrote this for you. I've carried it with me for over a year, unable to deliver it, unable to let it go. Ellie stared at the envelope, Thomas's handwriting clearly recognizable on the front. Why now? She asked softly. I cleared my throat. This might sound crazy, but the car, Thomas's car, it's been trying to deliver this message. Every night at midnight, the GPS activates by itself, showing a route to where Thomas first found you after your accident. Ellie's eyes widened. The clearing on Timber Road? I nodded. That's where Rebecca and I met tonight. The car led me there. A long silence followed as Ellie processed this information. Finally, she reached for the envelope, her fingers hovering over it for a moment before picking it up. Should I? She began. Please, Rebecca urged. Read it now. I've waited too long to know what he needed to tell you. With careful movements, Ellie opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. As her eyes scanned the page, her expression transformed. Surprise, then understanding, and finally, a sad smile touched with wonder. Oh, Thomas, she whispered, a tear sliding down her cheek. What does it say? Rebecca asked, her voice barely audible. Ellie looked up, her eyes glistening. He wanted to thank me. She shook her head in disbelief. All this time and he wanted to thank me. Thank you, I echoed, confused. But he saved your life. Ellie handed the letter to Rebecca. Read it, she said gently. Rebecca's hands shook as she took the letter and began to read aloud. Dear Ellie, if you're reading this, then my time has come to an end. There's something I never told you, something I need you to know. That night I found you on Timber Road wasn't a coincidence. Earlier that day, I had received devastating news. A preliminary diagnosis that suggested I might have cancer. I was driving aimlessly, angry at the world, questioning everything. When I saw your car in that ditch, something changed in me. Helping you gave me purpose in that moment of darkness. And in the months that followed, watching your recovery, your determination, your gratitude for life, it taught me how to face my own battle. You think I saved you, but the truth is, you saved me. You showed me how to live fully, even when time might be short. Your strength became my strength. I never told you this because I wanted to be strong for you. But now, as I face my final days, I need you to know that you were my inspiration, my teacher and courage. Thank you, Ellie, for everything. With eternal gratitude, Thomas. By the time Rebecca finished reading, all three of us were in tears. The letter had transformed the atmosphere, filling the sterile cafeteria with an almost tangible sense of connection. I had no idea, Ellie said softly. All this time I thought I was the one who owed him everything. Rebecca wiped her eyes. That was Thomas. Always finding meaning, always connecting with people. She looked down at the letter again. He never even told me about his diagnosis that day. He just said he'd stopped to help someone. He changed my life, Ellie said. After the accident, I decided to become a nurse, to help others the way he helped me. I sat quietly, feeling both like an intruder in this intimate moment and somehow an essential part of it, the final link in a chain that had brought Thomas's message home. Dawn was breaking as we left the hospital, the first hints of pink and gold touching the eastern sky. We stood in the parking lot, the night's extraordinary events creating an unspoken bond between the three of us. I still can't believe the car led you to the clearing, Ellie said, shaking her head in wonder. I know it sounds impossible, I replied. But after everything that's happened, I'm not sure impossible means much anymore. Rebecca looked toward her car, then back at us. I've been carrying so much guilt for so long, keeping you and Thomas apart at the end, then hiding his letter. Her voice trailed off. Ellie stepped forward and embraced her. He would forgive you. I forgive you. They held each other for a long moment, two women connected by a man who had touched both their lives profoundly. When they separated, Ellie turned to me. "And you, Daniel, a complete stranger who followed a midnight GPS signal into the woods." "That took courage," I shrugged, embarrassed by the praise. "Or foolishness. I'm not sure which. Sometimes they're the same thing," Ellie said with a smile. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a business card. "I don't know if you believe in fate, but I do. The ER department is looking for an administrative coordinator, someone good with technology and people." She handed me the card. "The job fair is tomorrow at 10 a.m. I'd be happy to put in a good word." I stared at the card in disbelief. After months of fruitless job hunting, this felt almost too perfect. "Thank you," I managed to say. "I'll be there." As we prepared to leave, Rebecca suddenly said, "Wait." She opened her purse and pulled out a small wooden box. "Thomas carved this during his treatment. He said it helped keep his hands busy." She opened it to reveal a beautifully polished wooden keychain in the shape of a compass rose. "This belongs with the car," she said, handing it to me. "A reminder that sometimes we need help finding our way." I accepted the gift, deeply moved by the gesture. "I'll keep it with me always." We said our goodbyes with promises to meet again soon. As I watched their cars drive away, I felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The night had been unlike any other in my life. When I returned to my car, Thomas's car, I noticed the GPS screen was dark. Whatever mission it had been on seemed complete. I placed the wooden compass rose on the dashboard and drove home in the growing light of dawn. The following morning, I awoke to a notification on my phone, an email from a company I'd interviewed with weeks earlier, apologizing for the delay and offering me a position. It was a good opportunity, better than anything I'd found in months. But as I read the details, I found myself thinking about Ellie's offer, about the hospital, where both she and Thomas had found purpose in helping others. The decision was easy. At 10 a.m. sharp, I walked into Lakeside Memorial Hospital for the job fair, the wooden compass rose in my pocket. The administrative coordinator position suited my skills perfectly, and with Ellie's recommendation, I was hired on the spot. In the weeks that followed, my life transformed. The job provided stability and purpose I hadn't felt in months. I moved to a small apartment closer to the hospital, cutting my commute and saving money. Rebecca and I met regularly for coffee. Through her stories, I came to know Thomas. His kindness, his humor, his unfailing belief that every connection between people mattered. She seemed lighter now, freed from the burden of her secret. Ellie became not just a colleague, but a friend. Her dedication to her patients inspired me to go beyond my administrative duties, volunteering in the hospital's outreach programs and patient support services. And the car. It never activated its GPS at midnight again. It became just a car, reliable, practical, getting me where I needed to go. But I knew it was more than that. It was the vessel that had carried me to exactly where I needed to be, at exactly the right time. One evening, about 3 months after that fateful night, I drove to the clearing on Timber Road. The summer air was warm, fireflies blinking in the tall grass. I sat on the hood of the car, looking up at the stars. "Thank you, Thomas," I said to the quiet night. "For the car, for the job, for the friends, for everything." As if in response, a warm breeze rustled through the trees. I smiled, feeling an inexplicable sense of peace. The next day, I received a call from Mr. Richards. His son was moving him to a retirement community closer to family, and he needed help sorting through his belongings. I drove over immediately. "Daniel, my boy," he greeted me warmly. "How's that car treating you?" "Perfectly," I replied, helping him into a chair on his front porch. "Best gift I've ever received," he nodded, seeming pleased. "Thomas always spoke highly of you, you know." I froze. "Thomas, you knew Thomas?" Mr. Richards looked confused for a moment, then chuckled. "Of course I knew him. He was my son." The revelation hit me like a physical force. "Your son? But you never mentioned, didn't I?" he said, genuinely surprised. "Must be my old memory playing tricks. Thomas asked me to look out for you, said you'd hit a rough patch after losing your job at Hanson." When I saw how bad things were getting for you, I knew it was time to pass the car along. I sat down heavily in the chair beside him, my mind reeling. But we never met. Thomas and I, we didn't know each other. Mr. Richards patted my hand. Oh, but you did. You worked together on that big healthcare software project 5 years ago. You probably wouldn't remember. You were just an entry-level programmer, and he was on the executive team. But Thomas never forgot how you stayed late to help him fix a critical error the night before the client presentation. Said you saved his career. Memories flooded back. A panicked executive I'd helped with a database issue, working through the night to recover corrupted files. I'd never known his name. He'd been just another suit from the upper floors. That was Thomas. I whispered. That was Thomas, Mr. Richards confirmed. He kept track of you over the years, always said he owed you one. When he got sick, he made me promise to watch out for you if you ever needed help. The compass of my understanding shifted completely. All this time, I'd thought I was a random stranger caught up in Thomas's unfinished business. But I had been part of the story all along. That night, I drove to the clearing once more. As I sat in the silence, I felt the full circle of connection. Thomas helping Ellie. Ellie inspiring Thomas. Thomas tracking my career. And finally, through a car with a mysterious GPS, bringing all of us together in a web of meaning and purpose. I took out the wooden compass rose and held it in my palm. It wasn't just a decorative keepsake. It was a perfect symbol of this journey we'd all taken. Separate paths converging, each of us helping the others find our way. The car's engine hummed softly in the background, no longer mysterious, but comforting. And as I placed the compass rose back on the dashboard, I could have sworn the GPS screen flickered briefly, just long enough to display 2 final words. Journey complete.